Everyone having a good time at Maker Faire? I gotta say, I love this museum. All right, I'm from New York City, and we got some museums over there too, but this is something to stand to. And I gotta thank Henry Ford Museum for having me here. It's been such a pleasure, and thank you guys for coming to see me talk. Hope I don't bore you too bad. But let me introduce myself. Start with that. My name is Drew Blank. I'm better known on the internet as Dr. Blankenstein. Some of my, hey, didn't I tell you to be quiet? Hold on. Some of my better known things is I've given some pieces to some well-known musicians. I've sold some stuff to Sean Lennon, the Square Pusher, Trey Anastasio from Fish, Kraftwerk, and so on and so forth. So that's been part of my claim to fame. But the more exciting part for me has been using low-cost, become e-waste disposable electronics to educate children and adults and anyone in the world, pretty much, how to get involved in electronics without a huge barrier of entry. All right, so for years and years and years, electronics was very scary, to people. For the I might electrocute myself part, which we'll talk about that in a second, and of course the confusion of it. And it's something that we're told that we, especially for years, that you had to learn from a teacher. It was 8 years of college. There's no way you're going to be an engineer just by tooling around. And a lot of us, especially those who got involved in Heathkits and ham radio and stuff like that, knew that was not the case. But to be honest, that was a very, very small majority of our country who had caught on to that. So what goes on, as you've probably caught on to being at Maker Faire, or else you wouldn't have been here in the first place, is there's a big movement right now to make sure that people know that this isn't really true, and that, science and engineering is accessible, extremely accessible, more than ever to every single person, certainly in this country, What you're looking at over here is filling up the world faster than you could ever even imagine. And there's good reasons behind that. If you think about the 70s or so, and there was much less battery-operated stuff in general, more stuff plugged into the wall. There's more, hi-fi electronics and stuff like that. There's no handheld video games yet. The concept of a baby toy was usually like a cardboard box in the block, like how I started growing up on. It's okay, we did pretty well with the cardboard boxes and the blocks and stuff. But what suddenly happened, though, and you might have heard of this, is as the transistor got smaller and smaller, it got cheaper and cheaper to make electronics that, in essence, didn't seem disposable when you bought it for your 2-year-old or something like that, but all children grow up, all these baby toys turn into what they call e-waste now. Why is it e-waste and not just disposable? Because it's got a circuit board inside of it made of many, many materials. Everything from silicone, lead, copper. So it really makes recycling it very complicated on a green angle of the whole thing. So because really what I do, I feel like scratches a bunch of itches at once. So we've spoken about we have an excess of, because obviously your 3-year-old's not going to play with this thing when he's 6. So what do you do with it? It's got two options. It either gets handed down to someone else who will eventually throw it away also. It'll get thrown away or put into the thrift store. My thing is, all of that disposable stuff is the best education you could possibly get at the lowest money without any risk. And when I say by risk, let's go back to the electrocution part of it, okay? So when things were plugged into the wall more and we had less battery-operated stuff, there was a good fear. And when mom said, don't ever open up, don't take the screws out of your electronics, don't touch electronics in the inside, I think it really did a good job of scaring a lot of youth into messing around with it. But the truth of the fact is, just about everything, especially something that was marketed or sold to a baby, goes through very, very, very strict qualification to not be dangerous, actually. So anything with a couple batteries, a couple AA batteries, a few AA or a 9-volt battery in there, you can open that up and you can touch that circuit board all you want. It is not going to electrocute you. It's actually going to do something a lot better than electrocute you. It might actually teach you something about how machines work. So I mean, you probably have heard this if you've been there. I actually heard the guy just before me saying the same thing, and if you could take one lesson away from a Maker Faire, it's the best one. If you want to learn from it and you don't need it anymore, open it up, look inside, see how it works. Even if you don't interact with it electronically, there's so much to learn about how switches work. Engineering isn't just computer code and making circuits. Engineering is also getting things to fit together into a box nicely. So you'd be amazed at something like this, how it seems all nice and put together on the inside, I mean on the outside, but when you open it, you could see that some engineer had to go through a lot of thought to how to arrange the buttons, how to keep it so the wires don't, get caught into this, and this thing doesn't keep the lid from closing and stuff. So there's lots of different parts of it. So I don't want you to get too scared away by the electronics part of it, because hopefully we'll have some time here at the end. I'm going to show you how simple it is just to open up something and take the simplest toy and make it way more exciting. So I got a couple examples over here of some of the stuff that I've done on different levels so that you could kind of get an idea where you could go with this, right? Obviously, you guys are probably all pretty curious what the bananas are about, right? So here, let me turn this down so it doesn't blast you. Now,
let's play the guitar.
There's a technology. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll be here all week. Try to feel.
Play a song, then start strumming
So,
the guitar.
I don't know, you may or may not have heard of a technology called capacitive touch, right? And it sounds like something that no one needs to know about and very boring, but guess what? Just about everyone in this room is using capacitive touch because that's how your cell phone works. That's how you can move your finger on glass and it will know where your finger is. You're actually turning on switches the whole way when you move around. That thing that they call a digitizer doesn't turn things into zeros and ones as we feel digital is now. They're talking about your fingers. It's a digitizer, meaning turning a piece of glass into something that you could touch, right? Very complicated when explained like that. Guess what? These are capacitive touch as well. Now, not too bad, right? So what's going on here? There's your old switches. Switches, in essence, have turned into something that we are the switch now. The switch is in the back end of the electronics, and you could actually just kind of set it off by the water in your body, if you would believe that. So every time, it's the same reason why if it's a cold winter day and you have your thick gloves on, your phone doesn't work. Because you're not actually making that connection that's turning that switch on, right? So looks kind of complicated. I just told you that that technology's found in the newest $800 iPhone. Hey, come on, I'm talking over here. And tablets and stuff like that, right? So did I hack up an iPhone to make my banana machine over here? That wouldn't be too advisable, right? That same technology that's found in an iPhone that makes your finger know where the screen is was located in this $299, what is this thing? Bleep, bleep, non-tactile baby toy, that will absolutely find its place in the garbage very, very shortly. It was one of the most annoying things I had ever seen. But what happened is just by the fact that knowing that there were no buttons on here, because if there's a lack of buttons and something's completely flat like that, then logic, just by learning a little bit, just from what I've told you right now, if you ever touch something or anything that's flat that actually doesn't have a button like that, you push in like a normal button, you could just assume from that it's using a capacitive touch kind of thing. So what I'm saying here is, if you wanted to experiment with technology that 10 years ago was revolutionary, changed the way that we interact with electronics on all levels. Touch screens are very shortly going to be on every single thing that we own. Is within 10 years has been able to get into our hands for $3. So there's a huge missed opportunity, what I'm saying, by throwing that straight into the garbage or just treating it as it is. So if someone's sick of it, if you had bought something like this for a child and now he's over it, the right thing to do before throwing it in the garbage or sending it down to the thrift store on a STEM level would be pull out the screwdriver, open her up, put the screws in, take the screws out, put the batteries in, and see what's going on in there. You wouldn't need to know anything about engineering to open this up. The second I opened it up, I was met with little metal contacts, and guess what? When I touch the metal contact, the noise activates. If I'm able to touch a metal contact on the circuit board, I could say, hey, if I run a wire out from that metal contact, I'll be able to connect whatever I want to it and use it as a switch, So in essence, I'm not trying to make some like wonderful new instrument with this, but there's a really good lesson to be learned that, your phone is in essence 100 bananas by 1,000 bananas. They're micron small. You can't see them, but if you pull that glass out, there is actually wires hanging out of the glass on your phone, And we don't see wires coming out of glass isn't something that we would have ever thought would be something that we're messing around with, and you wouldn't go and mess around with it on your iPhone. But at $2.99, you have no risk. The only thing that you're risking is possibly learning something with your child, learning something yourself. I mean, I got back into this later in life. I started young with circuitry, and then I kind of faded into a bunch of different industries and wound up back at it. And guess what got me started up again? I got a Christmas card from a friend of mine, and it played, I don't know, some Christmas tune or whatever it was, and I ripped it open, and inside, and this is the heart of getting involved in this. Let me find some of these. You'll find one resistor. Pull one out so you can see one. Keep in mind, resistors don't always look like this anymore because they're using much smaller ones, but they're still very hackable, right? So how would I find out which resistor inside here controls the pitch? Well, I'm going to show you after in this, but believe it or not, you just got to put your finger on it. So the second you touch it, meaning if I have this thing open right now, here, let me turn this on actually.
Let's learn our ABCs. Press the letter and listen.
Okay, so it sounded probably
B says
something like that when I got it, right? So if I crack that open and start touching literally, like lick your finger, it adds a little bit more electrons will flow through faster, and you'll hear something like this.
W says W says
Change because when your body touches, the same way that when I touched this banana before, the resistance and the moisture in your body interacted and started a switch, right? In this instance, when you touch that resistor, it will change the pitch the same way for the same reasons. What happens at the end, you get something like this.
R says
Sounds a little bit different than when I bought it. So, like I said, we got a three-pronged thing here. What do? We save this thing from destruction and from a landfill. All right, learn something about electronics, how to modify it, opened it up, saw some professional engineer's work, how he arranged the buttons, how he laid out the circuit, and then lastly, we modified it, and now we have something one of a kind, special that you feel like, it's like like finishing a jigsaw puzzle. It's a really good feeling that I can't even describe to someone. It's just one of those things that I'm sure you've experienced in your life when you complete a project or it works when you didn't think it works and you just get really excited about it. So it's an easy way to get people excited about electronics because you see the effects right away, right? If I went into a Ford, and I'm not telling everyone not to be professional engineers and go to school for it, and you absolutely should, but if I was told that I wasn't going to get to anything fun like this until 8 years of schooling and you're saying, well, there's a ton of math. This is what they told me when I said, oh, I want to get into this. It was always like, oh, well, there's so much math and 7 years of schooling. You sure you're good for that, Drew? And I was like, I don't know if I'm good for that, actually. So, and realistically, engineering is open to all of us. It really is. It's a wide open world for it. It's at the lowest cost it's ever been. It's very, accessible to everyone. So accessible that it's being thrown away and becoming a nuisance, is what I'm saying. So just by modifying a $1 baby toy that you found at the thrift store, you could learn about the electronics. You could have a project and a final piece. Now, if you take it up a notch, this is something I would consider more of my artwork than just like a straight circuit bent piece. And in this instance, the thing was cool to begin with, because that'll happen sometimes, and it won't be like that. This is a musical calculator that Casio came out with in the early 80s. I was inspired by Kraftwerk with that one, right? The circuitry in this thing is so small that when I got to the circuit board, even in the 80s, it was terrifying to even think of doing anything to it because I really liked it as it normally was, and I didn't want it to break. So what do? So instead of just quitting on the whole thing, and instead, I'm never going to use the calculator, right? Now, here's the problem. It plays music. Hold on. Not very loud, right? Anyone hear that in the back? Can't, it's not, a little bit, right? Good hearing still. But the point is, if you're going to use it as an instrument and you're going to, elaborate on it, then you have to get that output out of that tiny little speaker and get it into a bigger speaker. So that's going to take some modification. Does that take engineering classes? Does that take 7 years of schooling? Absolutely not. That's the disconnecting of two wires that are on the speaker and putting those two wires onto a jack now. So instead of the back row hearing it like this, we have volume now. Just by adding one component, literally this little guy like that, which you get for 25 cents. For anyone here who's a musician or a composer or does sound effects or a movie, I'm saying as the calculator, recording it with a microphone or whatever wouldn't be the suggested way to use it in a professional sense. So you want a professional output on that. How easy is that to do? It takes 5 minutes, right? So, like I said, I really couldn't do much modifying to the calculator itself. So all I did was run that output, literally drilled the hole through the back of the calculator, attached to the speakers, and got those wires inside there. And then that opens up the entire world of what I could do to the sound after it's, almost like, I don't know who's ever played guitar or worked with guitar pedals and stuff or any effects. Even in computer effects, GarageBand or whatnot, if you have a piano sound, you want to add reverb, it happens after the fact, you add it later. So by getting control of the audio output of this piece, it allowed me to do more to it. And I'll show you some of the other stuff I got. Let's make sure I don't blow you away again. So you can write a melody. Right, now what I added to it, this is a little module that I came up with. I tried to make it as pretty as possible. It did a really good job, right? Yeah, but so what it does is I tried to make it small so that it could sneak into things like this. Things that, in essence, if you don't know how to interact with the circuitry of the piece itself, or in some instances like this, it's too small or too valuable, what I did was I just added another circuit to those audio outputs so that now I could do more to it outside of that. So here, let me put that on and show you what that sounds like. Doesn't sound the same anymore. All right, I'm going to put that on the mic for a second and show you this. There it is affected, and let's turn it off again. Versus that. Now, here's a really cool thing. Once you find a resistor that controls something, there's a lot of things you could do just by knowing that. All right, one of my favorite things is adding light sensors. Because light sensors, actually, just after me will be a Thurman presentation, which, it's really cool when things are affected by movement and light and not even interacting with the piece anymore. So I added a light sensor to my effect after the output Remember, I didn't modify anything on the calculator itself. All of the modifications happened after I was able to hack that output. So check this out. But as impressive as I might be, that's not, that's not why I'm here. I want you guys to know how easy this is to do. I mean, it really, really is simple. I mean, once you open it up and get anything to work, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot at Maker Faire, I mean, that first LED is everything. Getting that thing to blink, getting that pitch to change on something like that. So what I ask for you, try. Just try. You know, buy a 99-cent toy, break it. You know, take one from the basement and mess around with it. You know, take your kid and mess around with it. Take your whoever it is, and you'll be amazed on how quickly the bug will bite you. You know, just by knowing that you have a little bit more control over the world around you, because that's really what we're talking about. That's in essence what STEM is. All right, we're heading into the last 100 years. If you don't walk through these wonderful halls of this museum and not understand that it's been a ridiculous past 100 years, the next 100 are not slowing up at all. And the language that we're talking here, STEM as it would be, or as STEAM as I call it, because art's very important. So it's not STEM actually; it's really STEAM. So pass that on if you could. But no, really, that's the language of the future. It really is. I mean, it's the universal language of where we're going to be in just about everything that we're doing. So it's even if you don't know how your automatic car is going to drive you there, it's nice to know how the system works or what sort of systems are in play, or like your phone. You know, how many people in this room knew that the glass on their smart device actually had, touch sensors laid out throughout the glass? You know, that's a cool thing to know. I know the first time I touched one, I had no idea how they were doing it. It was like voodoo black magic. So when you see that voodoo black magic broken down into banana playing, it's a lot easier to suck it up and understand it. You know, if I showed it to you on an iPhone and how it integrates with their system, you literally would just be like, I don't really care what this guy's talking about right now. So the bananas, especially for the children, you know, and not to put it down, but it's like, keep it weird, keep it fun, keep it exciting. You know, this is fun, exciting stuff. You know, it's not as boring as I was told it was. Now, the last thing here I'll show you before I get into a quick little demo on how I do this. Now, this was done the same way that I did the calculator. I found the PVC tubing out front of my house. Nothing that you would think, because, you know, when you think of upcycling, you don't think of like the scrap material that was disgusting in front of your house or whatever it was. But I turned it into a didgeridoo and to an Australian instrument, but that wasn't good enough. I could have just used the tube as a didgeridoo. I added the same effect that I added to this. All I did was put a microphone at the end of it, put some switches on it and stuff. There we go, let's turn it on. Hopefully it's coming through over here. See, I'll show you. I'm a really awful didgeridoo player. talking about the old major circuit. Been around for like, I don't even know, 5,000 years, you know. Add a tiny piece of circuitry, something completely new. And of course, I had to add my light sensor. Piece of junk, PVC tube, going into the recycling bin, getting chopped up, turned into tires or something like that. Now it's the only didgeridoo like it in the entire world, unless, you know, something on, hey, how you doing there? So, anyway, long story short, the rest was decorating, which just about everyone can do. You know, arts and crafts, if you get yourself a magic marker. I mean, it looks a lot more complicated than it really is, because inside, empty tube, microphone, 6-component circuit, and that's it. And you just created a one-of-a-kind instrument that no one else in the world has for $6, you know, $10 or whatever it was, and with zero risk. You know what happens if you drill a hole wrong on a piece of plastic? You get another piece of plastic, you know. So a lot of these kits, they're great. You know, Arduino's great. You know, I'll never stand here and talk bad about that. But part of what I won't say upsets me, but it concerns me, is I see a lot of people getting part of building the circuitry part and then falling completely head nose into the programming, and that's going to leave you half powerful in our STEM world. You know, it's the solder. It's the meeting of the tactile, the physical reality, and the software that creates the world that we are right now. So, and they're expensive. I mean, not terribly expensive, but the learning curve's very large. The risk of breaking something that's $50 especially when you're a kid and on a budget, or just whatever, if you're on a budget in general, which most of us are, you know, you don't want to break something for $60 when you're trying to learn something. So I'll just sit here and I'll talk to you and preach to you all day long about opening up cheap electronics. As long as it doesn't plug into the wall, as long as it's battery operated, it's safe. Poke around on it, touch it, you know, move some wires around and stuff, and see what happens. I mean, if you get a puff of smoke, then you know that when you put the wire on this kind of thing, it blows it up. If it makes a cool sound, you learn something, you do it again. You know, you'll know for the next thing that you open up, all right? So, I mean, that's pretty much what I do. I mean, so the art form has been called circuit bending. People will call you a hacker for it or whatever, which when I grew up meant that you were going into people's bank accounts on computers and stuff. But the word hacker has changed a bit, and circuit bending is part of hacking. And if you wanted to get more involved in it, it's so easy. YouTube, I don't need to tell anyone in the room here, is like the college of the universe for everything, you know? So you just type the term in. It's important. The only part you really got to remember is circuit bending and how to, and you've got instructables, you got, YouTube videos, step-by-steps. The materials are dirt cheap, and that's good for us who are building stuff, but that's also the reason why this stuff is going into the garbage so much more often, because as the price of these components drop, it's cheaper for the manufacturers to make these electronic toys. Of course, people want to buy the good cost stuff, and what is it really worth if you spent $15 on it and you used it for 2 years and you're sick of it and you're sick of hearing it? You know, it doesn't really have much value when it started at $15, whereas the electronics of the past, you know, or a guitar or something like that, or, you know, gain some value or whatever. So it's important for us to keep an eye on it because it's definitely going to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, we're in an upgrade world. People are very often, your companies are forcing you into upgrades that you didn't even want. And what goes on with that old phone? What goes on with that old, it's just going to pile on and pile on and pile on. So if you could spread the word and help me spread the word, especially those in the room who have children in schools or work with schools, that clear out the thrift store, do the thrift store the favor, get those toys out there and bring them into the science classes, because there's this endless lessons that you can come up with just by letting people explore electronics that pre-exist already. So do I have a chair or something? Here we go. How much time do we have left? Anyone have the time? Huh? Okay, good. We're in good time. We're in good time. So here, back to where we were before. We have our mini piano. Okay, I'm going to just try to show you really quickly how simple these things I'm talking about could be. So this is what the piano sounds like. So you see, immediately we have that first problem. I said I can't put this in this, right? So if I want to actually use this as a serious instrument, at this point it's completely impossible. And most people would look at it and think it wouldn't be a serious instrument, right? So let's open her up together. I haven't opened this yet. I don't know what's inside either. It's a big surprise. I wanted to keep it real. Meaning, it may break, but we're all going to learn something together. It probably won't break. And like, look what I'm doing right now, right? Soldering iron's over here. All the wires are over there. I'm not even present, but do you know how many people have never even used a screwdriver before? Or know how satisfying it is to pull a screw out? I mean, or put a screw in? My wife the other day was like, wow, that was really fun unscrewing something. Like, you wouldn't even think that taking something apart is a lot of fun. Okay. So what do we got? Not that much, right? But what do we see right here? There's our speaker that we were talking about before. Oops. So, soldering iron. Wire off the speaker. Didn't have to completely remove it. Sometimes I leave the speaker in and just connect the jack off the two, but the easiest way and for demonstration purposes. This is great. These, a lot of people haven't caught on to. Automatic wire strippers save you so much time. One of our sponsors here at Maker Faire makes a pretty good one. I'll leave them nameless until they make me a sponsor for their But this is a great thing. This is probably the most expensive tool on the table. I mean, actually, this is 3 times as much as your cheap soldering iron here. So what I'm doing at the end here is I'm curling the wire, because it was a little, when you cut most wires that aren't solid core, they have a lot of strands. Now the problem with having a lot of strands sticking out is if one of those strands, and here's the part of circuitry that drove people nuts and still has a habit to, is if one thing's wrong in certain instances, it will be the end of it. So that little strand of wire, especially with a speaker, I'm going to put a little solder on it. Okay, and a little solder on the other one. Of course, I forgot my solder tip cleaner. Great. And there's that jack. One end is negative. I'm guessing right now, because the speaker wasn't labeled. And this is what I'm talking about as far as, like, it's not all going to be easy, but this hasn't been hard so far. All I'm doing is attaching a couple wires to a little jack. Okay. all these things, helping hands or an extra hand. See how it holds the component in place for me so I can solder it easy? Lead-free solder. Doesn't melt as well, but does the trick. See? How long did that take? All right. Fire, yeah. So now that's recordable. That's in GarageBand. That's on stage. Whereas it was pretty much useless with the little speaker before, just by adding a 25. Here, I'll do it right now. Now I can put reverb on it. Yeah. Can't affect it with just a speaker, right? It's already sounding more like a real instrument, you know? Here, I'll even play. That sounds like an instrument. It's all right. Well, check this out. Remember I told you about finding a pitch resistor? Sounds like complicated stuff. After that, hold on. So pull the battery out real quick. So what happened was I sent through way too much electrons to it, and it crashed it out for a second. Very common. Okay? So you'd be like, all right, broke it. It's over, right? Take the battery out, put it back in. Back on again. Okay? So we know that resistor's a little bit sensitive to getting too many electrons at once, okay? So if we had more time, that would tell me that I should be a little bit cautious about which potentiometer I choose to hack that with. All right, now what a potentiometer is, it's the same thing as a resistor. This one is 1 meg. So if there's a 1K going all the way up to 1 meg, every turn is 1, 10, 20, 30. And you see these, every volume knob you've ever turned, every radio station you've ever changed, there's always been something that's, in essence, changing listening to. So, all we got to do here, have these little metal things that are meant so that they don't slide around when you put them into professional electronics. Got this little plastic thing that people usually leave on the back. It doesn't need to be there. That other engineering part, that makes it thicker. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about that's not circuitry, but still teaches you a lot about engineering, meaning, okay, so I haven't even attached it to the thing yet, but I already have to start thinking about the fact that when I put this thing on the front of the board, is it going to bang into the back of the keyboard? Is it going to touch a piece of metal? So, if I stood like this, I could, I guess. Oh, well. Hi, Internet. Hi, Internet. I didn't even know the Internet was there. Okay. Okay, we're just going to hack this real quick. So I'll show you real quick. We're running out of time here, but wires. Even if you run out of time, you can probably guess what I'm about to do here, right? I found that pitch resistor. Going to strip those wires down. Okay, twist the ends. Remember I told you we want any sloppy? It's called tinning a wire. If you don't, it'll just make your life crazy. It takes a little extra time to do. When you're dealing with, like, it's okay with 2 wires, but when you have 100 on the table, kind of sick of twisting them. but it's a really, really important part of circuitry. Because if you do it sloppy, you're going to wind up frustrating yourself with something. You're doing it right, and you got something real small in the way. Pin those up real quick. Perfect. Wires. Attach them to our potentiometer. And this is literally 5 minutes away from being like the first toy I showed you. So, I mean, this isn't really heavy-duty stuff to get involved. I mean, you could do more after, of course. Because what I would do next with this piece, right after I got that audio output working, I would add something like that to it. I would also do the pitch hack to it. I would add the light sensor to it. So that one resistor is now allowed to hack the thing 3 different ways. That attached. We're going to disconnect this. Pop a little solder on it. Thermometer. So the helper. It's not doing it, it's the vision problems that really I have a problem with. There you go. That's circuit bending. I mean, and that was just enough time to get it done, and that was with the pressure of this guy telling me I'm running out of time. So imagine how easy it is at home. So everybody, go find a toy, break it open, get inside it, and start circuit bending, all right? Thank you guys for your time. It's been awesome.